Welcome back to the Social Seller Podcast with Conor Paulsen, where we interview the world's highest quality communicators, professionals, business owners, creatives, and everything in between. It doesn't matter what industry you're in. If you're a high quality communicator, there's a good chance you're living a lot happier life, but you're also bringing those opportunities into your life almost like a magnet. My guarantee is that on this show, we only interview people that I, one, look up to, and two, that I know are going to continue to kill the game for years to come, and I want to make sure they're on your radar. But what I've learned is by asking the best questions, we get the best responses, and that's what the highest quality communicators, our social sellers, are all about. Let's hop inside to the Social Seller Podcast. Welcome back to the Social Seller Podcast with Conor Paulsen. Today is an especially special episode, an interview, as we get to talk to someone I look up to, Larry Namer. And Larry Namer is an absolute legend. And if you haven't heard of Larry Namer yet, we got connected through a mutual friend, Brian. Not only is he a legend in the entertainment and media space, known as an entertainment and media entrepreneur, but founding Entertainment Television and Movies USA magazine. And then after founding several other media companies over the last decade or two, it sounds like Larry currently heads Global Entertainment Group. And growing up in the poor parts of Brooklyn, New York, got degrees in economics before he realized he wanted to teach. And I know there was no way that I could try to get everything we've talked about in all of your credentials in here, which is honestly my biggest salute to you. But Larry, thank you for the invitation to come into your home and have a conversation with us today.
Sure. Well, thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. And to get started, I think that was one of the biggest things that surprised me. What was your childhood like? Because I had, looking into the research, I have a good feeling that your upbringing made you someone that was this driven. What was it like?
Well, my parents were immigrants. My dad came here from, his family went Turkey to Cuba, Cuba to the U.S. Most of them went to South America because they spoke Spanish, so it was easier for them. But, we grew up in what we didn't realize was a poor neighborhood. When we grew up, we thought it's like the way everybody grows up. So I grew up in a place called Coney Island, which was an amusement park, and the subject of a lot of Woody Allen movies. And my dad drove a Pepsi-Cola truck, and my mother worked for the Department of Social Services, and I was the first and only kid in the family to go to college, and it was whether I wanted to or not, it was beaten into me. So, it was just predetermined that I was going to be the kid that went to college, so that's the way it kind of developed.
Your career, I think, if we were to sum it up in some ways, is almost always, or it's been primarily focused in some way around media, and you have been such an innovator in this space. Not only do I want to break that down, what was an experience for you, maybe as a child? Is there a memorable moment when you experienced a form of media, whether it was new or it just had an impact on you that kind of lit your life up and gave you some direction?
Well, I hate to date myself, but I go back to the days when we only had black and white TV, and then all of a sudden somebody did color, and I was just like amazed that you could watch stuff in color and stuff, and it was actually Disney's Wide World of Color. So that kind of woke me up a little. But when I grew up, I really didn't have any aspirations to be in the media world at all. I mean, growing up in that kind of environment, the family wanted me to get a civil service job and, get a pension and be secure and do all of that. There was no such thing as entrepreneurship in the family. But I went to school and I got this degree in economics, and I was planning to teach, but the city of New York cut the budgets for teachers. So there were no jobs. So I took what I thought was going to be a temporary job working in a new industry called cable television. Back then.
What year is this? And how old are you?
71, 25? And I was 21 years old. And
wow. So
I ended up going there for what I thought was going to be just a little temporary job. And they gave me a job for $90 a week, working as the assistant splicer in the sewers of Manhattan. So literally my job was every day you lift the manhole and you go underneath and you put the wires together. And so I had done that, and then Time Incorporated bought the company, and a little more sophisticated HR, and you basically had the people that are working with, very few of which spoke English, And then you had the Harvard and Yale guys from Time Inc. And then somebody in HR said, hey, wait a second, there's a guy there that has an economics degree and he knows how to read a balance sheet. So for a while, I kind of became the interpreter between, those two worlds and stuff. And then, cable began to take off and I kind of grew with the business. And eventually, oddly enough, I became the vice chairman of the electricians union, in charge of all cable TV workers. So I was like 23 negotiating labor contracts and
What?
stuff like that, which was kind of crazy. And then they kept asking me to go into management, and at first I just wouldn't do it. But finally, they made me the offer I couldn't refuse, so I went into management. And I started because I understood the technical side, and I understood how the work came together, and I knew all the guys, and I knew the union rules and stuff like that. I became the head of construction, and head of service, then installation, then literally then I became the head of all operations and stuff like that. So I kind of grew up over 10 years, I grew up in the cable business first, but more on the operations side, nothing to do with programming at all. But then the big cities began to issue cable franchises, because they began to realize that cable was something beyond just good reception. And the city of LA issued a franchise, but they wanted everything to go underground. They didn't want stuff on the telephone poles. Well, the only underground system built in the country was Manhattan, and that was the one I built. So I ended up getting recruited to come out here against my better wishes. But it was one of those things. They offered me 4 times what I was making in New York, and they rented a big house and all that kind of stuff for me.
How old are you at this point?
I was 30.
30?
So I came out here and they literally gave me a piece of paper from the city saying, here, you could build this cable system, and another one from a bank saying, here's a credit line of $400 million, go to work, So that was it. And then I had, that's when finance and programming came under me. So that's when I really got interested in what that wire can do.
And what did that wire lead to? And before we move on, because I love hearing this breakdown, because in all my research, in my opinion, I would have liked to hear more detail about your story coming from I living in my 20s right now at 27, but having an idea of what the 30s looks like and 40s, and if I can learn something from you and anyone else listening. Now, you mentioned earlier that you as a kid, you didn't plan on getting into media. And it sounds like there's a few turns up, from when you're growing up until 30 that you didn't plan on, but you took the opportunities, or they were too irresistible. Now, what was enabling you to keep climbing the ranks, though? Why were you separated from others at 23 years old, getting those types of management opportunities, negotiation? Usually that's a seasoned person. So 2 parts. What motivated you? How'd you do it?
Yeah, it was interesting because when I became the director of operations in Manhattan, I was 26, and I had 350 people reporting to me, none of which were younger. Everybody
Damn.
there was older. So that was an incredible challenge, getting people who are older than you to actually listen to you. So you had a lot of tough things. A lot of people just wouldn't buy into it, and you had to wave goodbye to them and do things that you never in your wildest dreams imagine. You'd be firing people and things like that. But I just got fascinated, when I knew the technical stuff. I just got fascinated that wire could do a lot more than just do good reception in Manhattan. So I started to think of programming ideas. So when I got out here to California, a Brooklyn kid, everybody that you know out here is in the entertainment business, or you live next to someone in the entertainment business, and they're going to parties and premieres, and they're going out with actresses and models and stuff like that. And I said, I want to do that. And so when programming reported to me, we actually won. We were named by Forbes magazine as the national model for cable programming, which was incredible.
Wow.
And we were doing interactive TV and things like that, going back to 1981, pre-internet.
Was it that one remote that had 5 buttons? I've seen it in game shows and things from home.
Yeah, that was
That's
it.
unreal.
And so we did that. And then I had the system I built out here in California was 61 channels. but there wasn't 61 channels in existence then. MTV had just started and CNN had just started, and I had to fill the channel. So I just got character generators, and I had the library channel, the school lunch channel, the lost pet channel. You know, it would just be text that went across the screen. And, you know, then I started talking to like people at the studios and said, hey, you know, you got all those premieres, why don't you invite me? And they go, you know, you're in the utility business, you're not in the entertainment business. So I said, look, you got the best 2 minutes of a movie is a movie trailer. The only time I ever see it is when I'm in my house and when I'm in the movies. I said, wouldn't you want to show me that when I'm in my house so that you make me want to go to the movies? They go, yeah, but we can't afford that. I said, okay, I'll tell you what, you give me the movie trailers, I'll put them on TV, but I want to be invited to all those parties and premieres and stuff. And they went, yeah, sure. So literally I hired a kid for $3 an hour. He edited the stuff together. And when we started doing kind of marketing surveys, what's your favorite channel? And people go, oh, I love MTV, I love ESPN, I love that trailer channel. And I'm going, wait a second, I get the best 2 minutes of a $100 million movie for free, and people are telling me it's one of their favorite channels. And I kind of filed that away. And then what happened is the company that I worked for, which was out of Canada, they sold the company and moved back to Toronto. And they wanted me to go to Toronto. And I said, no, I didn't go from Brooklyn to LA to go to Toronto. I'm not doing that. Direction. I said, I'm done with snow and cold and all that stuff. So I left there, and a friend of mine, my friend Alan, who was from New Jersey, who always wanted to be in the entertainment business, he's going, let's come up with an idea. And finally we just started going, you know what? We did this trailer thing and people love it, and there's really no difference between going to a green screen and Madonna has a new video going, and Schwarzenegger has a new movie. I said, it's the same hand. So we came up with this idea. Originally we just called it MTV of the movies. And we said we'll get all these trailers from there. Instead of music videos, we use trailers, we'll get hosts and stuff like that. So we wrote a plan. We were silly enough to think that people would actually give us the money, which they weren't. Everybody said that, and they go, look, you're not Rupert Murdoch, you're not Ted Turner, you can't start a TV. Nobody wakes up and starts a TV network. But Alan and I were just not smart enough to listen, so we just kept going. But it took 3.5 years before somebody gave us. How old
were both of you and Alan, at this time?
Alan was like 27, I was like 33.
Okay.
4.
Okay. Yeah.
Still, still pretty fresh. And so, we met a guy on Wall Street who, interestingly enough, he was the entertainment reporter for his college newspaper, young guy, just got into the job. And he goes, I love this, this is great, I'm gonna do it. I said, great, we need 60 to 100 million, but 60 will be okay. And he went, well, I'm only allowed to sign for 2.5. We go, well, what the hell are we gonna do with 2.5? You can't start a TV network for 2.5. So he said, well, that's all I can sign for. So Alan and I just said, you know what, hell with it. Give us a 2.5. So we took $2.5 million, and I called a friend who was teaching radio, television, film in Austin. And I said, do you have a bunch of kids that need intern jobs for the summer? And he goes, yeah. He goes, we couldn't place. I said, great, send me all you got. So we rented apartments in Hollywood, bought mattresses, put the mattresses down. And with 31, we started with 11 employees and 31 interns and $2.5 million.
E Network. The network that all of us know, that started the Kardashians and so many other humongous series that have changed our culture and everything. But you're telling me 11 full-time staff, 31 interns because you got $2.5 million and needed a minimum of 60. Yeah, and it was funny because it's kind of sometimes when your back's up against the wall, you come up with your best ideas. When we realized that we didn't have money to do fancy production. As a matter of fact, we didn't even have professional recording equipment. We bought used industrial half-inch machines and stuff like that, and it was crazy. But we realized that the one thing we can do is pick hosts. So we're not going to change, we're going to have high production value, we're not going to have special effects, but the hosts are going to be it.
So when people don't realize, they still say to me today, oh, you were so lucky you had all those great hosts at the beginning. Had Greg Kinnear and Julie Moran went on to do Wide World of Sports, and Mark DiCarlo went and did Studs, and Richard Blade did K-Rock and VH1, and on and on. But they don't realize that to get the first 5 hosts, we put 7,200 people on tape. I mean, that's where we focused our money and our attention and stuff. And we just had to invent stuff. I mean, the first show that we had that was really a breakthrough, that wasn't just trailers, it was Talk Soup, which we did for Greg Kinnear. And, when I first came up with that, people looked at me and said, Larry, you want to do a TV show that makes fun of TV shows? And I'm going, yeah, exactly. And people were going, that's crazy. I said, but Talk Soup did really well, and I mean, that show ran 26 years and made a lot of people, from, Aisha Taylor to Greg and Henson and, all those folks did real well. And then the other one, the next one that really broke through was Alan and I were in an elevator in New York, and we met this really tall radio guy. And he was saying, oh, come and watch my radio show. So we went and watched the radio show, and I said, this is amazing. I don't know if you guys remember, there was an old TV show called WKRP in Cincinnati. It was a sitcom about a radio show, and it had this ensemble cast. I said, this is like the reality version of it. And the guy's name was Howard Stern. And so I said, I, again, went back and said, I want to put cameras in this guy's radio studio. And people going, Larry, when you did Talk Soup, we thought you were out of your mind, but radio's been gone for 40 years. I go, you don't get it. I said, this is a real life sitcom. Wow. You have Howard, and then you got, all the people around him. And so that was another breakthrough. And then, we went on to do Wild on E and Hollywood True Story.
What did you see in Howard Stern? Like, so you were there, you experienced, he said, hey, come to this talk show. And from the sounds of it wasn't that big yet. I mean, maybe it was gotten some traction, but you showed up and you said, this is...
Well, we put Howard on television. That's really what got it. I mean, for us, it was easy because he had a very loyal following. I mean, first, I loved the show. I loved his irreverence. But we said, and Howard tells people, our big task was getting on cable systems. So Howard would literally get on going, and I've got a great show tomorrow, but if you're not getting it, call your cable system and demand it. So we literally had millions of people calling every cable system, screaming at them, you better put this show, you better put this network on. And then cable operators will call me and they go, Larry, please have that guy stop saying that. They're flooding our phones. People with real problems can't get through. So that's what really helped the growth. And then once we grew, at first year we grew into 14 different countries, and now it's in 142 countries.
Wow.
And everybody talks now about influencers and stuff. Well, there's no bigger influencer of pop culture in the world than I mean, you look at all this. I mean, now it's all Kardashians all the time, but it's had a major effect.
Yeah, and just on that note, I don't want to go down the rabbit hole, but I'm curious, and there's not many people I can ask, but this is one of those opportunities. When was the first time you even heard, what was the year, if you can even remember, you heard anything that was resembling the Kardashians, or we might be doing something with them? Was it networks fighting over it, or was it?
Oh, no. I know.
And like, how did this come to fruition? Why did the Kardashians start?
Way back, Alan and I wanted to start another network. This is again pre-internet, and the network we were going to start was called FXTV, Fitness and Exercise Television. And our partners in that were Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Bruce Jenner, and Chris. And that's how I know the girls since when they're little. But unfortunately, we had this other partner named O.J. Simpson, and that network kind of went straight down, after O.J. and had that little episode with his ex-wife or stuff like that. So that kind of fell apart. But I know the girls from when they're little, and Chris was always the driver, and Chris was always saying, how the girls were going to grow up and do great things. And it's kind of like, yeah, okay, Chris, I feel that way about my kids, but no, I watched them grow up and stuff. And, there's no question that Chris was really the driver that made that family into a brand. I mean, it's one of the biggest brands in the world now.
That is unbelievable. What was one of those, was there a correct step that you see that they made, kind of understanding the industry, that kind of got them in, or that got Chris the in, you know, whatever the FX TV, was that her first or launching point, or was it something before?
Yeah, that's when Chris really got involved in, you know, understanding the way TV networks worked and stuff like that, and she got a good lesson in media. But, you know, Chris was the brains behind that whole thing. Chris knew exactly what she was going to do with those kids and stuff, and she did it. She had a just clear vision.
Wow. Someday we will get Chris on an interview. I don't know how long it'll take, but one day it'll happen. No, and so as we're continuing this momentum now, so you started Movies USA magazine started before E. When did E officially start? Like, what year did the company, what was
Well, we formed the company in 84.
84.
And we went on the air in 1987.
Wow. No, I love the context, and I thank you for sharing that and going into the detail. You and Alan had, right, that was your partner, Alan?
Yeah.
You guys definitely had some fun together. I mean,
Yeah,
both
it
of
was
you wanting to be in the entertainment, and then
it was
figuring
crazy
out
times, you know, because again, you know, 31 interns, and I think 16 of the kids never went back to school, because they started in the summer as interns, and probably by the fall, half of them were vice presidents, and yeah, because as soon as it went on the air, everybody said, "Oh, why didn't you tell us that's what you wanted to do? We were giving you the money 3 years ago," but we were totally pirate, and that's really what made it. Was people watching it and they felt like, I don't think I'm supposed to be watching this, because we were very inside. I mean, even the first Academy Awards that we covered, we couldn't get credentials. They wouldn't give us press passes. They went, "Oh God, you know, we don't want you guys." So we literally climbed over the fence with the camera bag and everything. We snuck in, and we were filming, trying to stay away from security. And then finally they caught us. But when people watched it, it was the first time people were going to tell us about what you're wearing, you know. It was just this whole other way of covering stuff, and then they threw us out, and that was, you know, that was the end of that one. But it was real pirate. I mean, we had a studio, and, you know, people would, you know, there was no TV network in Hollywood, which was kind of interesting, that Hollywood's supposed to be the center of the entertainment world. There was no TV network, so we were the first ones there. We actually rented the, what was the old freight railroad station.
Wow.
There, and that became the studio. And we just get all these people drop in and stuff, because we let them do whatever they want. Like the Wayans brothers would come in and go, "Hey, we're in the neighborhood, can we host?" You go, "Yeah, sure." So, you know, turn the lights on, and we just turn the cameras up, and, you know, they literally go live, and Paul Abdul, you know, and stuff like that. So, you know, all of those people got to do stuff on the channel that they never would get. You know, everybody was kind of cut and dried. It was Entertainment Tonight. Tell us about your next movie. How was it on the set and stuff? We were like, you know, just totally different.
When you and Alan are these young guys, and you guys are figuring out anyway, time and time again, with absolute bare bones resources, and probably the statistics vastly against you, kept, you know, breaking through. And it was doing it on, you know, for the most part, like a shoestring budget, but figuring out alternatives. And I love that you said earlier, as entrepreneurs, you see that some will purposely put themselves kind of like in a scenario or environment where their back's against the wall, and then magically you start to perform because you need to, right? It's not a want anymore.
It's a survival instinct.
Yeah, and obviously you've done this, or you just don't see the fear. Do you lean more towards the opportunity, or is there ever like a fear that's fueling it in the sense of, I'm not going to fail?
Well, first, I never think that I'm going to fail. So, but, you know, when I ended up going into Russia, when it was, you know, not politically correct to go into Russia, and I actually had the #1 TV show in Russia for 10 years and stuff like that, 5 days a week for 10 years. And
you're the only American to ever do that.
Yeah.
Right? The only American.
Yeah. And then, you know, that was it. You know, I've always looked at Rupert Murdoch as being what's wrong with the world of entertainment and media and stuff. So I would look for places going, where could I go where I'm on the same plane as Rupert? You know, and there were very few places. So Russia was one. And then China. So then I went into China, and, you know, it's funny because people say,
You're a busy guy.
you know, when I went into China, Um, didn't speak the language, first time there. And I just said, this is a challenge. I said, to produce programming in a country that I didn't grow up in, a language that I don't speak, for people that I really don't understand other than I like their food. I said, that Rupert can't compete with me here. And so we did well. I'm still in China and stuff. And I had, a lot of times people say, what's your proudest moment? And they expect me to say E, but it's not really, E obviously I'm proud of, but I wrote a comedy, I wrote a sitcom about the contradictions of modern Chinese life. So I produced a sitcom in China, in Chinese, for Chinese people, and it ended up getting, it was nominated the Asia TV Awards. It was the only sitcom from China that was nominated. We went 70 episodes, which was, I had to give up because I said I can't be funny for more than 70. But, to me, coming up with E, it's certainly an accomplishment to get it going, but, people like Hollywood gossip. It's not such a great revelation, but to write a comedy about the contradictions of modern Chinese life, where, people's bank accounts grow quicker than their social skills. It's really, you see the Russians with their, Gucci this and Prada that and stuff, it's a good example. But, we didn't win that year, but we were the only comedy from China nominated. Wow. And I said, okay, now that's pretty cool, that the funniest TV show in China is written by a New York Jew. To me, that's an accomplishment.
You have so many cliche accomplishments, and you get to talk about them humbly. And talking with you, it feels like you'd be a great beer drinking partner. You'd be able to tell stories and I'd learn a lot.
Well, no, my father was an immigrant Pepsi Cola driver, and we learned humility, and respect of women. If I dare say anything to my sister, I just beat the hell out of me and stuff like that. So you just grew up differently. I don't really take much of this very seriously, quite honestly.
Yeah, and what keeps you going? You obviously, to create all of these organizations and networks and connecting all of these people, and then to achieve your goal of when you're in your late teens and saying, or maybe early 20s, I want to be in this entertainment scene and I want to be around these people. I want to go to the premieres. I want to go to the parties. And now you're in it. Not only that, but you're influential in that community. I'm sure at this point, they're calling you, right?
Yeah.
To figure out these opportunities. So as that shift happens, was it as great as you thought it would be? What was the highest point of finally being around, these people? Was it at a party and you're looking around and you're seeing, some of the biggest celebrities, and it's like, was it that great? Was it that great?
Yeah, when people, were coming up and saying, I've been trying to meet you for years, and I'm like, really? Why? I never quite got it. I still don't quite get it, but yeah, it's that, and I get invited to a lot of people. I'm kind of a contradiction because people think I'm going to be very different than I am and stuff. I really don't take a lot of this seriously, quite honestly. It's
when you say this, what do you mean by this?
Just the adulation and, stuff like the reverence. People think I'm going to be a buttoned-up guy in a suit and stuff like that. And, that's just not me. I still think Hollywood is funny shit, and I say Hollywood with quotes. It's like you can't really take it seriously, But I think that's what made E, was the fact that we didn't take it so seriously. We didn't do the Entertainment Tonight, and stuff. And we took chances, like when Wayans Brothers came in and stuff like that. And they said, we'll host. And we went, yeah, cool, whatever. Because there was nothing for us to turn the lights on and turn the cameras on.
I love it.
And stuff. And, that was funny stuff. And
what advice would you give to someone in their early 20s, and they might be, or just, early 20s, and they might feel like they have something more to give in life, or maybe something to create? They don't know what that is yet. And what piece of advice do you wish you would have known in your early 20s?
Well, I think, the biggest thing that I've kind of learned over time is to constantly self-assess. Like, just because you wake up with an idea doesn't mean it's necessarily a good idea. So literally, I wake up with 10 new ideas every day. By the time I go to sleep, usually the 10 out of 10, I go, oh, what was I thinking? Those are really bad. Most entrepreneurs, regardless of age, hang on too long. They just think, oh, this is my idea, everybody tells me follow your passion and whatever. And it's such bullshit, quite honestly. You got to look at it and say, you know what? Just because I had the idea doesn't mean it's a good one. And people stick with stuff way too long when they could be doing something that could materialize and could be good. They're so stuck in trying to prove that their idea was good, even though times have changed, the idea wasn't so good, that they waste their time instead of going on to something that they really should be focusing on.
I love that. And you talk about assessing your life and optimizing it and iterating. And what does that look like? Could you be granular to the point of, do you write it down on a pen and paper next to your bed? Is that where you write your ideas down?
Yeah.
Do you keep them in your head, or you put them in your phone?
It's all in my head.
All in your head. And then what does that iteration process look like as you go drink your morning coffee and you live through your day? How do these things, are they just kind of sitting there as you ponder, or what are you doing?
Yeah, I kind of go in and out of stuff very quickly. I don't say, I wouldn't spend the whole day on any one business or business idea and stuff. So I kind of bounce in and out on that stuff. And most of my good thinking is in the kitchen. I love to cook, and cooking for me is kind of, if I didn't cook, I'd either have to learn how to play golf or I'd have to go for therapy. And I don't want to do any of those. So cooking kind of is like where I decompress, and you just kind of get lost in the process of it, and it lets me think of a lot of stuff. It clears my head.
I love that. And for some people, it could be meditation. For some people, it's yoga.
Yeah, it's different.
Movements.
It's different for everybody. Some people need therapy and stuff because they need someone to draw it out. I'm good at drawing stuff out of myself. I just need to be able to clear my head and be able to do it. And like I said, cooking does it for me.
Yeah, is it okay if I put you on the spot, Quay?
Yeah, sure.
Oh, you're the best. And I love how you answer too. You just open the door, leave gate open, and you're like, oh yeah, just come on in. But very, very chill and mellow. So yes, you definitely fit the. I wouldn't say you fit the stereotype, but from our conversation earlier, I was excited. Now, to kind of put you on the spot for a second, if you have these 10 ideas, whether you did 10 today or not, can you just tell us one, whether it's like a sitcom idea and just in a condensed way?
Well,
Any kind of idea.
Oh, sure. I'm working with some friends. It's actually one of the more interesting things that I'm doing. I have some friends in New York who did, they were the branding guys behind the Ed Hardy brand.
Mm-hmm.
I was always amazed by how you take an ugly skull and turn it into a $2 billion company,
Unreal.
which is what they did. And then they went on, they did NARS Cosmetics, which is huge now. L'Oreal, I think, bought it for $2 billion. So, Mr. D, one of the guys, and then there's another guy named Richie Rich. These are all, they take LBGQ to the next level. I mean, they're guys who wear makeup and stuff like that. So they're starting a platform called Beauty Queen. So it's really about beauty queens.
Oh my God.
And for me, it was unusual because they asked me to come in and help them just understand how the media world works, because they come out of that world. And that was kind of interesting because when the picture ended up somewhere, friends that I grew up with would send to me messages going, oh, we always knew it, when did you decide to come out? And I'm like, no, it's not, But to me, that's a real challenging one, because again, I'm learning something. And, the only time I've ever been refused access to a restaurant in LA is when I was with those guys, because they were dressed like, so they're real interesting, but a really needed kind of thing. I mean, you look at these kids now that are just disenfranchised. They're confused as to am I a boy or am I a girl and stuff. And their parents don't understand them, school don't understand them, their friends don't understand them. They need something where they could communicate with people who are going through the same kind of, trauma or difficulties that they are and stuff. So that one actually is going to launch in 2 weeks.
Oh, wow.
And stuff. So, that's a fun new idea for me.
I love that. And I love it. There's so much consistency amongst your whole career, right? Because you always want to take on that challenge. And it's more of just, it's kind of, do you view life as a game a little bit? I mean, you say, I don't take this all seriously. And it's not as a game that, yes, it's serious and relationships are, but, this progression and the challenge makes it new. And I like doing new things. And
well, yeah, but I got to say, once you do E, then people actually think you know what you're doing. So the stuff gets a lot easier. E is just so big and it's all over the world. And everywhere I go, I could say anything. I go, I'm going to do a TV network about this table. That's brilliant. We love it. I'm like, oh God. E kind of validates most of the stuff you do. So, that's kind of it's been easier to just be able to do whatever you want. And plus, when people say, what's the greatest thing that's ever happened? Am I allowed to curse on your podcast?
Absolutely.
Oh, okay, good. So, the thing that E really did for me is it gives me the ability to say, fuck you.
Yeah.
People say, we want you to do this show. I go, fuck you.
Yeah.
You don't have to do anything you don't want to do. So that kind of frees you up to do, the things that you think are fun and the things you want to put your time in. When I was doing my friend Blake and I, we were going to do a reality network until we realized that it wasn't really going to hold up over time. But, Blake went on to start Tom's Shoes, when you talk about... Wow. So when we decided not to do the network, Blake went off to the Amazon and came back and said, these kids don't have shoes. I'm going to start a shoe company. And I'm like, okay, whatever. And, look what he's done with that company.
That is unbelievable. And I love just the insight. You just keep going, and there's no stopping.
The choice is learning how to play golf, and I ain't going to do that.
See, I've gone in and out of phases of liking golf. I realize that those are where some big conversations are, but yeah, it's also hot. Yeah, I get it.
There's more to life than golf.
Yeah, I agree. What I do want to ask is the ability to say no. Because it's one thing I remember reading early in college, and you read about it in the books, and that's like one of those creed rules of finding success, or at least having balance and happiness and some form of sustainability in your lifestyle. How far, or do you remember an age range that you finally had enough, or were taking on too much, or grew horizontally too much with too many things that you had to start saying no?
No, I wouldn't say there's an age. It's just like, once E launched, it was an quote, an overnight success and stuff. So it just gives you the ability to kind of pick and choose your things and stuff. And, the main thing that's come out of E is, the ability you're not forced to do it for money. You're not forced to do it because you're trying to bolster your career or anything. It's going, okay, I did that. Now I can do whatever I want or whatever I feel good about. So that's really what it's about for me now.
Yeah. And if there was one word that would kind of define who you stand for today and the direction you're headed, or what you value the most, is there a word?
Just kind of free thinker. I'm not bound. I don't worship Rupert Murdoch or Ted Turner or any of those guys. I mean, they built wonderful, big companies. I wouldn't say that I admire those companies a lot, but it's doing stuff in places like doing stuff in China. It's just like amazing to me that I'm doing it in a place that, is totally different than any place I've ever been and stuff like that. And that's a challenge. And it's one of those things where every day is a challenge. And I get to do more there. Like I was doing interactive commerce stuff there. When people here didn't have a clue, we did a TV show. It's kind of like a Gossip Girl kind of show. And one of the girls wears great shoes. Oh, those are great shoes. Where'd you get them? I got them on sparkle.com. Well, it ends up, we actually own sparkle.com. And we actually have a shoe designer on the production staff, and we did Shoe of the Month Club, which you could never do in the U.S. So we actually were making more money selling shoes than we made on selling a TV show.
Physical goods. I love it.
Yeah.
Free plus shipping in the digital marketing world, right?
Yeah.
Some version of that. No, Larry, we've focused a lot of the conversation amongst a list that I have not been able, a list of accomplishments that I haven't had to be able to talk to with a guest. So I've learned so much hearing your journey and being able to ask questions in between. Now, what I also probably know is that the person you are and why you're happy and you're in control of your life is that it probably wasn't always the greatest. Was there a time in your childhood, teenage years, that you can remember that was the most vulnerable or like lowest point you can remember, and what was that like?
Well, it's interesting. I went to a public high school, and there were 3 neighborhoods that populated the high school. Mine was the very poor, then there was the not very poor, and then the just poor. kind of thing. But again, no, we didn't realize that there was anything there. But the high school, I was like, one of those kids that the parents said, "Oh, don't play with him. He comes from Coney Island." I mean, the neighborhood was 35% Caucasian, and the rest of it was Puerto Rican and African American and stuff. So I just my friends were, just whoever lived next door. I mean, we didn't think about, things like that. And, my parents were very working class and stuff like that. But, it was kind of a little bit of the rejection there. Like, I had my girlfriend, her parents sent her away to like private school because they were afraid that she would get pregnant by the kid from Coney Island. Things like that were just bizarre. But I grew up, my parents were great. They didn't, my father was a hitter, but, not in a mean way. He did what he thought was, his job as a dad to do. And he did a pretty good job, I think. And, I had a good childhood. I mean, didn't have a lot, but then again, didn't realize that I needed a lot. So
I think that's the superpower, right? They talk, Grant Cardone and Ed Milet, they have an interview from 3 years ago on a series called Power Players. And they talk about how they both came from, they talk about low, middle, and then middle class, and that you want to be low middle where if you can almost, you see it as the normal, but you don't realize that you are, and you've had to work, that might be some of the best traits for an entrepreneur and someone who has perseverance.
And it's interesting, the high school that I came out of, and again, it was a public high school and not a very good neighborhood. To this day, there are more Nobel Prize winners that have come from this high school than any other high school in America.
Wow.
And there's no explanation for it whatsoever. Yeah, and then on the artistic side, Lou Gossett, Neil Diamond, all these people, Harvey Keitel, everybody came out of that high school.
Wow, it's in the water. What parts of your day-to-day routine are necessities? Whether it still holds true today, or whenever you would say that you were at like full capacity, just moving forward with or whenever you were balancing as many things as possible, what are those things in the routine?
During the pandemic, I'd say 6 to 8 o'clock is like cook dinner. So I just stop whatever I'm doing and I start to think, what am I going to eat for dinner? And then I either go and buy it or I cook it and stuff like that. So it's just getting away from all the emails and the Zoom calls and stuff like that. Gives me some time to clear my head. The other thing I do, which is a little bit unusual, if you call me on the phone, other than my kids, I never answer the telephone. But if you email me, I never go to sleep without answering every email that comes in. So people over the years have gotten used to knowing that if they really need an answer, send me email, I'll get to it sometime tonight, as opposed to, having to stop in the middle of something that I find more important and stuff. So that's kind of my one, little quirky thing and stuff. I rarely answer the phone.
Yeah. And as we're wrapping up, how do you spend your time outside of interviews? I know you're on nonstop Zoom meetings, calls, outside of the kitchen from 6 to 8 p.m. How do you enjoy time? What makes you happy?
Every once in a while, I find a woman who finds the entertainment world as funny as I do, and then it's fun, so then I'll date. But dating, for me, dating in Hollywood is hard. I'll go to pre-pandemic, I'll go to a club, and, I'll get hit on by some cute 20-year-old, and I'm like, wow, I look cool today. And then I go, yeah, wait a second. Her friend went, oh, there's the guy from me, So I'm kind of like past the point where I realize that, I'm no longer a hunk, and I got to capitalize on my cute personality and stuff like that. But, I'm in between wives now. When I find a girl that doesn't take this shit so seriously, then it's fun. But I don't need. I have plenty of. I love my kids, and we get along great and stuff like that. So it's not like I need someone. I would like someone, but I don't need someone.
I love it. We had a conversation with David Meltzer, and on that interview we talked about living in the state of abundance, and that you have the right lens on the world when you just have trust. You know what you want, but it's not that it needs to be here. It's going to come at the right time, and when you have that, usually the best opportunities seem to unfold.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for your time, Larry. This has been an absolute blast. Before we hop off, if possible, I want to do a quick tour of some of the artwork because this is just
sure.
unreal. And how can people get in contact with you, Larry, or just learn more about you aside from your Wikipedia page?
I'm an easy Google. A lot of stuff. If you Google me, you can look at the wiki pages or whatever. But LJN at LJN Media is the email that actually goes directly to me. I mean, a lot of the other stuff, the people in the office, they kind of pick off an answer for me, but that's the one I answer myself.
Hey, gatekeepers, keep you happy and allow you to cook, right? 6 to 8.
That's
and
it.
Thank you so much for your time again. And on the final note is, how do you want to be remembered? What is the legacy that will be remembered after you go on to whatever next life? What do you want to stand for?
Just, I think, my attitude towards Hollywood and the media world, it's just funny shit. Don't take it so seriously.
I love that. I love it. I love it. I love it. Thank you, Larry, and we will see you soon.
Okay, thank you.
That was awesome.
Okay.